Yes, it's a happy new year 2024. Welcome to the program Agric. Today we on air and television, Abuja, Nigeria. I am Khadija Oluwatoyin. I mean, on this episode of the program, we shall be taking a look at the effects of fertilizer application on crop growth and yield. And of course, we have an expert in the studio that's going to be dissecting how these fertilizers should be, applied and what should be looked out for upon application when should these fertilizers be put in to these crops and then of course when harvesting should take place. We know that when the yields come up, this is harvesting that comes after before we begin to talk about post production. And to discuss that with us on the program this week is Ogunremi Oluwashijibumi Charles. Welcome to the program, Charles. Yes, it's a new year,
Yes.
and everybody tends to start on the fresh page. Trying to see how things should be done, differently, so that they can achieve more than what they had done for the past year. This is why we're bringing this topic because we know that most parts of in some part, let me say that some parts of Nigeria, some farmers still do not use fertilizers and their produce come out so very well. While in some other areas, due to the topography, due to weather, due to some circumstances or the other, they leverage on the use of fertilizers. Today we'll be taking a focus on the use of these fertilizers and what should be looked out for and what not.
Yes, thank you very much for the interesting topic. Uh, First and foremost, uh, I will want to talk on the seeds that farmers plant first, because the seeds also goes in tandem with the fertilizer use. You don't expect to plant a bad seed or grain, as its case might be, and even if you apply fertilizer, you might not get what you're supposed to get. But the first thing that the farmers need to get right is to get good seeds from seed companies. That's the first thing. However, talking about fertilizers, uh, fertilizers are just being applied to the soil, whereby it gives the soil the nutrients that the plant will now use or utilize for them to have better yields, optimum yield. That is just what fertilizer does. Uh, well, it is understandable that we have different types of soil across different agroecological zones. In Southwest, we could there could be better soil in the Southwest compared to the northern side of the country, but we should also bear in mind that different crops have their own specifications of fertilizer. Different crops have different demands when it comes to fertilizer application. However, the basic the basis of everything is the fertilizers are just meant to enrich the soil or to add nutrients to the soil so that the plants can uptake the nutrients for optimum yield. So that.
Okay, you told us that. I mean, like you said, in the West, the soil is different from what we see in the North, and of course, when you want to compare the East and North Central and North part of Nigeria, you
Yeah.
see that there is little disparities when it comes to soil formation. Tell us what in application of fertilizers, of course, to different crops.
Yeah.
What first should farmer do?
Yeah, like I said earlier, the seeds is the first. However, I wouldn't want to talk much on the seed because our main focus here is the fertilizer. Now, uh, we have legumes, we have cereals. Uh, I want to talk more cereals now. like maize, sorghum, millet. Uh, these are crops that demand lots of nitrogen, especially for their cob formation. We have different types of fertilizers. We have the organic fertilizer, we have the inorganic fertilizer. Um, Talking about the inorganic fertilizer, then we are talking about the NPK fertilizer. That is nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium. Um, the NPK fertilizer, they are macronutrients that the plants need. Hmm? Now, saying macronutrients, that means they need these fertilizers in large quantity for seed formation when it comes to seeds, or for cob formation when it comes to plants like maize. So and there are different stages of the plant's vegetative growth that this fertilizer should be applied, especially uh, for the NPK. Anytime the let me use maize as a point of action here. Once the cob formation starts for maize, that is when you're supposed to apply fertilizer. After the cob, hmm, during the cob formation, you don't apply fertilizers again, so that there won't be any crude uptake of fertilizers in the cobs. Anytime the maize tassels, that's when you should apply the requisite fertilizer, and after then, don't apply fertilizer again, so that the plant will use up the fertilizer and there won't be any form of residue of that fertilizer applied in the seeds at the end of the day.
Okay, so does this apply to other crops?
Yes.
Say, the cowpea.
Well, when you're talking of cowpea, then let's delve a little into legumes. These are crops that fix their own nitrogen readily in the soil. They are nitrogen fixing crops, legumes. That's when we talk of soybean, cowpea, groundnut. If at all there will be any need to apply fertilizer for any of the leguminous crops, then there is this fertilizer we call SSP, that's a single super phosphate fertilizer. These are the ones that will be best, that I could recommend to be applied to legume crops. And you only do this when maybe the nutrients level of that soil is very low when it comes to leguminous crops. And that is why in some places you notice that they even plant legumes to enrich the nutrients. After harvest, eh, any soil or farmland that requires nutrient enrichment, you leave the legume crops for them to decay, to decompose on such farmlands. The decomposed leguminous crops have a tendency of enriching the fertility of that soil. So,
For example of legumes, you're speaking big English. Some of our
okay,
farmers
okay,
are smallholder farmers.
okay. When I'm talking of legumes, I'm talking of plants like cowpea, that Hausa people call wake,
Beans.
beans, that is beans too, yes. And then groundnuts, soya bean. I think these are the major bambara nuts. These are the major leguminous crops that we cultivate in this part of the world. Then, like I said, there are micronutrients and there are micronutrients when it comes to fertilizer. I said earlier that the macronutrients are the NPK, that's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, that is being required in large quantities. While by the micronutrients are like the zinc, cobalt, uh, chlorides that are needed in minute quantity. Uh, yes, and a major factor
Okay.
when it comes to fertilizer is fertilizer application. When it comes to the vegetative and reproductive stages of plants, you don't just apply fertilizer anyhow. There are stages at which you apply fertilizer, and there are some plants that require different types of fertilizer at these different stages. Like maize, for example, um, at 2 weeks after planting, it is always good to apply a little bit of urea on maize plants.
That's a type of
Yes,
fertilizer.
urea. Then maybe around 6 weeks after planting, NPK. Then the moment the uh, maize plant starts tasseling again, that means the cob formation wants to start. Then you apply urea again. This aids cob formation for maize. And another thing is there are different ways of applying fertilizer. Uh, I'll talk on about. I think there are about uh, four fertilizer application methods. So, the firstly, I would like to talk about broadcasting. Broadcasting, this is a fertilizer application method that involves an even spread of fertilizer.
That means the land must be, the soil
Must be plain, yes,
without any.
without maybe well, it could be a little bit undulating, but it is not the best. It has to be plain, and this is majorly used for rice plantation, whereby you broadcast, and then first, before I even delve um, into fertilizer application methods, there are different types of fertilizer. Fertilizer comes in different forms. We have the liquid fertilizer, we have the powdered fertilizer, and we have the granule. Yes. So let me talk about the liquid. The liquid fertilizer is always mixed with water.
Okay.
Another thing farmers need to know, because most of our peasant farmers are not learned. There are specifications. There are instructions to the usage of these fertilizers, because you can't just use them anyhow. We hope in the next or in the near future, all our farmers at least should have the capacity to be able to read instructions, labels on this on the fertilizer packs, especially for the liquid. There is always a calibration, maybe 1 ml to 1 liter of water, 2 mls to 2 liters of water, and liquid fertilizers are always applied through foliar sprays. That means they apply them to the leaves.
Oh.
Yes.
I was coming to ask that. Yeah, you talked about application of fertilizer in different stages.
Yes, yes.
And I remember the last time we were at your office in Advert, you talked about when we went to check the cowpea variety. Then that was on practical. You said that there's some produce that some crops that do not need fertilizers to touch on them while growth is on.
Okay. That is application, and some fertilizers could be a little bit toxic on the leaves, on the plants. Well, this still boils down to the fact that there are calibrations. If you're supposed to put 1 ml for 1 ml of water or 1 liter of water, and you know reneged, if you do such foliar sprays, it could affect the leaf. Yes, like for cotton.
You cannot manage. Like,
No.
okay, I did this month. I'm able to get fertilizers, and I did. And let me say, 1 to, how did you mention it just now? And then I have less than that. And okay, I want to manage this fertilizer. That's if the fertilizer is the same one I'm still using for the next step. Okay, why not let me just put 5 ml rather than 10, and that's why I can use the remaining 5 ml for the next month or for the next spray.
If you deviate from the instruction or the directives on the label, if your plant doesn't give you the optimum yield, then you bear the consequences. The joy of every farmer is to get the best yield at the end of the day, bountiful harvest at the end of the day. So another thing is most of our farmers don't have the funds to buy these fertilizers, and it now boils down to what they will now tend to manage. The only thing that can, when you are talking of managing fertilizers, is if you have good soil with good nutrient level. Well, if you manage fertilizer, fine. The nutrients already in the soil can complement the fertilizer you are managing. But once your soil doesn't have the requisite nutrient, then you have to fully utilize the fertilizer to get the maximum yield. Because you have to look at all the stress that you put into the farming processes. At the end of the day, from planting to weeding, to about 3 months gestation period, or even more than that. And at the end of the day, you don't want to compromise on the yield. So these are the issues.
Yes, ensure that you use the right amount of fertilizer on a particular crop at the particular time. We'll take a quick break on return. The program continues. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
It's still the program Agric today on ARSN Television, Abuja, Nigeria. We'll be taking a look at the effect of fertilizer application on crop growth and yields. And yes, we've heard so much. We've heard the kind of land that we need to apply these fertilizers on. We've been giving example of how to go about planting maize. We've touched on cowpea, which we know as white cake or beans. And now we'll be talking on he has talked about the step in the application of fertilizer. He said is in 4 steps. So what will you say?
Yeah. So what I want to discuss are the different application methods. I've talked about broadcasting, and then we have the placement, which is what we use more for our cereals. That's for even for the cowpea, for the millet, that is when you apply the granular form, granules. That's the NPK. You just place them beside the stem of the plants, or in between rows, in between two plants. That is yes.
For example, we have these two.
Yes.
And then you put
the fertilizer in between two plants.
But the ground will be dug.
It might be, it might not be. Okay. But it's better to dig a little so that the fertilizer is being placed, and all the granular form of fertilizer. That means the moment rain falls, it washes little by little. No. It dissolves little by little down the soil so that the roots of the plant uptakes it from there. That is the placement method. And when we are talking of the placement method of application, we are talking of the granule type of fertilizer. I told you there are 3 types of fertilizer: the liquid form, the powdery form, and the granular. The liquid form, we have to dilute with water and do a foliar spray. Also, the powdery form, we have to dilute with water also and do a spray. It is only the granule, which is the normal NPK, those are granule. Even the urea too is a granule that is being done, that is being applied through placement. Yes, the granule too can be applied through broadcasting. So another form of fertilizer application is fertigation. This is when you mix the fertilizer with the irrigation system. That's called fertigation.
Don't be carried away. Farmers hear English very well.
So this is when, like presently, I know there are lots of farmers doing irrigation farming because we are in the dry season. So they mix fertilizers with the water, with the source of water. So as the water is dripping on the plants, it's going with the fertilizers too.
I remember earlier we talked about not having some fertilizer drop on the plant, so it doesn't have effects.
No, because there will be some calibration that would have been done.
Okay.
There will be some level of mixing in such a way that it won't affect that plant. So that is why our plants need some level of technical know-how of the quantity of fertilizer that their plants need, in order that in such a way that it won't affect the plant, and the plant will make use of it.
The farmers also need
They need some level of training. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And well, one way or the other, our forefathers um technical know-how. We don't know who trained them, but there is a natural wisdom that they use in those days. And they always, but the soil nutrient that we have in those days is not the same as the one we have now. The nutrients have been depleted. That is why we have to use fertilizers to augment. The fourth one, I've talked about three. I've talked about broadcasting. I've talked about fertigation. I've talked about placement. The fourth one is foliar.
Okay.
Foliar is the one with the liquid. Like for BT cotton, there's a stage of BT cotton whereby you have to dissolve urea in water and do a foliar spray. Yes, when the cotton starts producing balls, yes, they need a foliar spray, but at a certain quantity of urea to a particular volume of water. Because once the urea is too concentrated, if you spray it on the cotton flower leaves, the leaves will dry off. We've had conditions like that.
Wow.
Yes.
That means even those we have on other farms that do the spraying, that means they also have to go through some sort of way of training.
Yes. A lot of training, especially while we were trying to do multiplicational trials on the BT cotton farm that needs foliar spray for urea. So we needed to know the specific urea to be dissolved in a certain volume of water that will be beneficial to the
Okay, quickly, just curious. As a child, I know that in my primary classes of Agric, we're taught something like
crossbreeding.
Yes, crossbreeding. I try know you have to, like, you can have this plant at some point, take it off.
Oh, are you talking of grafting or
yes,
grafting or budding or?
Does it mean in this, for example, I have what should I use as example? Banana planted, and I am I'm cutting off to replant somewhere else. This is exposed. Do I now still spray? For example, if it has gotten to the level where this needs fertilizer, is this not going to affect? I'm just trying to speak from the mind of the farmer watching.
Well, the different plants have different specifications. Now you talking about banana. All banana needs is where water is enough. Banana needs lots of fluid for them to thrive. That is all what banana wants. I don't think banana really needs fertilizer. All banana needs is a requisite water, volume, and a loam soil. Yes, that's why most people plant banana maybe under their tanks or where there is good source of water. But talking of crossing or you mean planting a seed that has been harvested from the previous harvest? I didn't get your question.
What I was trying to say is that, for example, you're like a means of transporting, changing the position of.
Oh, transplanting.
Yes, transplanting.
Oh, okay. When you talking about transplanting, there is a stage of the plant where you can do transplanting.
Okay.
if you want to transplant any plant within maximum 2 to 3 weeks is okay, depending on the gestation period of the plant. Transplanting is better done at seedling stage, at the early stage of any plant, the seedling stage. And transplanting is better done in the morning, when the weather is still cool. And anytime you want to do transplanting, you need to make your garden fork or your shovel. Well, make sure you dig well in order not to hamper the roots and just transplant to anywhere. Then anywhere you're transplanting, you would have made some digging. You would have dug a little hole that can take the volume you're bringing there. Then immediately after placing it, you have to do a little watering, so that before the sun rises, at least the plants can acclimatize. Yes, yes. It's better done in the mornings.
Okay.
Yes.
So we talked about the types. We talked about the types of application, and now we'll be looking at general effect on yield.
On yield. Yes. Like I said earlier, uh, yield of maize and cereals is dependent on nitrogen.
Okay.
So anytime you want to apply fertilizer on crops like maize, millet, sorghum, I always advise farmers to go for NPK 20-10-10. Then the 20 goes for the nitrogen, then the 10-10 is for the phosphorus and potassium, because I always term crops like maize the nitrogen thief. They need lots of nitrogen for their crop formation.
Okay, quickly your advice to farmers as regards fertilizer application.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, we don't have much of land. I would have said it is always good to use a land this planting season and leave it fallow for the next planting season. But we have very minimal land to use, and because of that, I will advise farmers anytime they want to use fertilizer, they should have a better understanding on the type of fertilizer that is specific for that crop, and at what period of the gestational growth or vegetative growth of that crop they are supposed to apply the fertilizer.
All right, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, and that note, you've heard it. Ensure that you know the kind of fertilizers you're applying to your crop. Ensure that the steps and the period these fertilizers are to be applied. He said he has advised on some kind of fertilizers that are good for different crops, but he has also said it. Don't get it all twisted. He has said it that you should understand at what time and level, the stage of the growth of that crop that you need to apply them. On that note, thank you for joining us again. Join us same time, same station next week. I am Khadija Oluwatoyin, and I'm saying catch ya.